Hi everyone, I'm extremely excited today because I have a very special guest in this podcast series. We have Oya Geron today as my guest, and she has been working on AI for much longer than me, and she's been consulting brands, companies in AI transformation. And I've been following her on social media for many years now. It's a very big privilege for me to have her as a guest. Welcome, Oya, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, Berna. It's really pleasure for me to be here, and thank you for accepting me as a guest on your podcast. Yes, I've been working in AI actually in the past 3 years.
It's been 3 years now.
Yes. Actually,
I thought it's much longer.
yeah, most people think that, but actually, I'm a change management professional, and I'm working on transformation. And I'm a non-technical person, by the way. I really would love to express this.
You're not a
Um,
developer, you're not coder,
no,
you're not
actually,
engineer.
yes, I am not, but I've been working in different areas of business for a long time, both in Turkey and in the UK as well. And actually, I have started this business 3 years ago when I wanted to pursue my own business, which is, helping companies on their transformation journeys. And when I set up my own business, it was just about the time that it was a coincidence actually. The ChatGPT was released at that time, at that moment. And I'm a curious person. I like learning. I'm learning as my way of life actually. And I was so curious about this ChatGPT 3 years ago. And I started playing with it. I wanted to share this with everybody else on my, LinkedIn account and Instagram account. And at I don't know how it happened, but it just grew and it became my business. And for the last 3 years, I've been working with with companies and individuals on this adoption journey, how they can adopt generative AI for the productivity, creativity, innovation purposes. I think I have taught more than 5,000 people
Wow, that's
to this
so
year.
big number.
It's a big number. I mean, there are a lot of clients that I've worked with. So it's also great pleasure to see how people, flourish while using these models. But of course, in time, I saw some, ethical problems, issues. So I really wanted to be to learn these ethical subjects. So now I'm pursuing my master's in the University of Cambridge. So I can tell myself I'm doing this, consultancy, AI adoption consultancy to make sure that people and companies are productive, innovative in ethical ways, I can say.
Well, that is a huge topic. It's a really very interesting how we use AI not only as people, as persons, but also as corporates and companies. And you mentioned you trained like more than thousands of people. And how do you think AI can help us in terms of being a better person? Let's start with the personal aspect because everybody says, "Oh, AI will steal my job. We are losing humanity. Robots will start to control people, humans." But I want to look at the topic from a totally different perspective. Do you think AI can help us become much better people?
I think so, yes. I mean, my quick answer will be yes, but
Direct answer is yes.
yes, but I mean, not because AI is, inherently improving us. It can make us better humans by, revealing who we already are right now. In my, Cambridge master's program, I recently wrote an assignment. Kind of related with this topic. It's about, Lucy Suchman, her idea about AI being as a disclosing agent, which means AI systems reveal the assumptions and patterns that we embed into them, right? We think AI imitates us, but actually the important question here is what becomes visible through this imitation. Parents, often recognize their strengths or flaws in their children. When you see those flaws, you cannot ignore them anymore, right? It's a reflection to us because, and
I feel what you mean, because whenever I see a behavior in my children that I must change, I also see that they're reflecting me.
Yes.
So I start to focus on changing myself, not changing them. If I change myself and become a better version of me, that reflects them and they change as a result, not as a cause.
Yes, that's it. That reflection forces us to acknowledge it. It forces you to correct yourself in order to correct your children. And I think AI functions similarly, because we fed AI with our histories, biases, defaults, blind spots, and then now we are asking it to predict future. And when AI, produces something unfair, the issue is, rarely what did it do. It's the question here is what we teach it,
Exactly.
So this is where the chance actually for me, to become better humans appear, because we cannot fine tune away all the centuries of, societal patterns, biases, yes. And the improvement actually comes from building, future systems with data that does not repeat our historical mistakes, which requires, societal reflections and institutional change. And if we use AI in this sense, as a mirror for correcting us, rather than confirmation, because mostly we are using it for the confirmation, but for correcting us, then yes, it can help us, to evolve. But it's not because AI is moral. Let me clarify this part. It's not because AI is moral, because it forces us to be moral.
And it reflects our moral values back to us.
I think so. If we can use this in a good way, yes, probably we can be better humans.
And with all this, there's a huge topic that is sitting on top of everything, which is regulation. And AI is reflecting us, but at the same time, how much shall we regulate AI? Because it is moving so fast that regulating bodies cannot follow it. And regulation is, let me say it in a way, there's always a gap between how AI is evolving and the regulation and the ethical part. So what do you think about that gap? Is it a big gap? How can regulating bodies close that gap? Or how shall we approach this topic?
I'm not in the regulation part, so but I can answer this question in the ethical sense, ethical gap. One problem that I see in my work actually as an ethical gap, the technology is accelerating so fast, incredibly fast, but our sense of responsibility is moving more slowly. We can't catch that acceleration yet on this sense. And I think this creates both risk for inside companies and our daily life, and in organizations, because I mostly work with corporates and organizations. And I think it's a really important topic. People often, confuses AI with automation. You may have seen that as well. So,
because there is a separate topic called AI automation.
Yes.
But AI is not exactly automation.
Especially generative AI, you can't,
Generative AI.
it's
Yeah.
so hard for automation because of how it works actually. So automation necessitates things that has to be, discrete,
Yeah.
but you can't, control the output of generative AI in this sense. Companies see the system, produce an output for themselves, and they assume that it can also, take over the judgment, you know it can decide by on behalf of themselves, and this is really dangerous, by the way. So, and we integrate in companies, in corporates, we integrate these models into decision making processes. Now we are doing this, and without really understanding how they were trained and what assumptions they carry, or what level of human oversight, is actually in place. So and there's a really rush here to adopt generative AI for efficiency, for productivity, and people mostly skip fundamental questions. So if something goes wrong, who will be accountable? So and how do we know a model's recommendation is reliable? And the critical part, I mean, where should human judgment never be replaced? Another major gap, by the way, I encounter and I see is about AI literacy. This is really important, and many people assumes that AI knows, as if
Oh yeah.
something that it can access to a universal truth. So they don't know. I mean, they may not know it, but it's a responsibility for us to teach it as well. Or if they know, you can forget it. It's just predicting patterns from past data, and because it speaks fluently, right now it can
Yeah.
speak, so people treat it as human like. So this is the risk when the risk grows. Some may, by the way, this is very important, follow the suggestions that AI gave it without questioning them. And we already have seen a lot of, bad
Can you
situations.
give a couple of examples
Yes,
that
yeah,
people
yeah,
just delegate the responsibility to AI and
yeah,
uh, use
yeah.
it ethically in a wrong way, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of bad cases about, kids. I don't want to express it here, but there was a couple of suicide cases that because with generative AI, those kids by talking get the acknowledgement from it, or there are a couple of cases that companies gave, I mean, opened just chatbots to its clients, to its customers, and they couldn't control that generative AI. There was a case about DPD here in UK. They had to close down that chatbot in just 24 hours because they couldn't control what it responded. So I mean, the gap, I think, it's not only regulatory, it's also cognitive and educational. So this misunderstanding about what AI is important, and there is an overestimating what it can do. So we have to understand what it really can do, and until we address it, I think there's a danger about this. I mean, we put AI, in situations where it should never replace human judgment. I think this is the critical point for me.
And yeah, I totally agree that um, we should, as human beings, know much better about how AI works, and if there's a gap between how we think AI works and how AI actually works, that is the real danger rather than AI is taking over us. And do you have any suggestions or any idea how we can close that gap, how we can get more AI literate, and how we can make use all those AI tools much better, much efficient, and still take the full responsibility as human beings?
Um, I think yes, AI literacy is a very important subject. Ethical AI was, considered as just mostly level of quality, data quality, system design and governance. But with generative AI today, it opened us a new dimension, the user, and now the boundary between input and output is fluid. So the user's intention, prompt and behavior can directly shape what system produces. So I think ethics is no longer just an engineering question. It's about human practice. So this is the AI literacy comes as an important subject. So if users are not ethically aware, for example, if they don't understand how their choices, biases, or misuse can influence the system, you may create a really well designed model, AI model, but it can also produce harmful output. So this is why AI literacy really matters, because what we need to understand our own role in this loop, right? So yes, ethical AI starts with data design, but it is completed with the user responsibility and how do we interact with the system.
And how can we teach our children even to use all these better? Because I have a very important case. I usually pay attention to how my children eat, and I want them to eat healthy. And of course, they watch screens, but they never eat in front of a screen. But they were negotiating about, oh, I don't want to eat that. I don't wanna skip breakfast in the morning. And I said, no, first breakfast, then you can start watching TV. Then they turned on Gemini voice version, and they started to ask Gemini how they can convince their moms to skip the breakfast and go directly to the TV. And Gemini suggested them, I don't want to put errors on a specific AI tool, but Gemini suggested them to eat in front of TV. Because Gemini is trying to find a solution to their problem. And then I tapped into the conversation and asked, Gemini, don't you know that it's not healthy to eat in front of TV? And then Gemini started to explain why they shouldn't eat in front of TV. So Gemini can answer differently if we ask different questions. And that was a real good case for my children, how to use AI. But I'm just one example. How can we, in general, teach our children and create that awareness that this is just a tool and it is us who is using those tools like any other technology? That AI technology is not different than any other digital tools or nuclear technology. That can also be used very wrongly if we are not ethically correct.
Yes.
So from my perspective, I look at AI just like that. And how can we make sure that our children or we all, even adults, are aware about the personal responsibility of it and how to use it better?
It's a great example, by the way, and it's a very good example how an input, shapes the output, because if you change the question, the style of the question, the answer is changing. So it's a very good, example. And the responsible, do you think Gemini has a responsibility, anything that happens, as a tool, in this sense? And I think, it doesn't have any responsibility, right? Because it's just an algorithm. So
Exactly.
it's not a moral actor. The moral actor here is we are, the companies, AI companies are, as a parent, we are, and it doesn't know your house rules, as you mentioned, and it doesn't understand the context that you are in. Even it may not understand the age it is talking to. And so there is no sense of consequences about it. It just predicts the next likely, word from its training data. So I think the question is where does human responsibility sits in this chain, right? And I think the responsibility here is shared. It may not be equally shared, but the AI companies are responsible for how these systems are designed in this sense and how they answer, what safety layers they use, because it's now talking with a child. Whereas the safety layer with this one and how they handle this, children's interactions and can they recognize the sensitive situations in this sense. But yes, this is their responsibility. But as a parent, we have our own responsibilities as well. How we introduce those tools, how we teach about those tools, right? How we explained what AI is. So what it isn't. I mean, it's the same thing as, we want our kids, trust everything on the internet, on social media, right? I think
Exactly.
that this is the case. This is the case here. I mean, we don't want them to treat AI as an authority. So I think the problem here is because they can talk. There's a speech there, and they convince people with that their confidence level is huge. They can give wrong information with a high confidence level. So this is the critical part, that they may be seen as authority in the sense, but it doesn't carry any responsibility at all. It's just an algorithm. So it mirrors the patterns that was that the data trained on. So it's not the AI thinking badly. It's just the limitations of it's about training data. And your story here, I think, shows the real problem here clearly, because kids think Gemini told us to do it like this, and they get it as an authority, right? And they get this special insight from an AI here. So yeah, unless we guide them, they might follow whatever it suggests, simply because it speaks confidently. So in the end, I spoke a lot about this, but yes, I mean, it comes back, the responsibility comes back to us. I mean, who design it, who deploy it, who regulate it, and the ones we are as parents who put it in front of the children. Yeah, we carry that responsibility.
Exactly. And you also mentioned that AI can get different answers according to how you ask the question. And that brings us to prompt engineering. And especially for business solutions, I've been seeing a lot of content about prompt engineering and how you should prompt to get the answer that you like. And I also see there are so many templates about prompting. Like, if you want to get a really nice marketing tagline, use that prompt. If you want to get an, I don't know, essay, use those prompts, those templates. But I feel so, I'm not sure if these prompting templates work, because it is not something like one template fits all the solutions. What's your perspective on prompt engineering and in general about those templates?
I think I have the same idea as you, by the way. I don't believe in the best prompt, the universal prompt templates. I don't think there's something that, prompt engineering in the sense, because we are not engineering anything here. These AI systems don't respond to perfect wording. They respond to the clarity of your intention and the context actually you provide. I mean, but people mostly assume, prompt engineering is, crafting clever sentences. I mean, the heavy lifting happens. Yes, the crafting the sentence is important, but the heavy lifting happens before we type anything, defining your problem, deciding what matters, and understanding, what kind of answer you want to use it. I mean, think you have, you're working with an agency and you are describing your needs and your ideas to them. It's just like that. Yeah, I mean, instead of, for example, if you want to use a terminology, use context engineering rather than prompt engineering, because you are actually engineering the context here. You give the model, rich context, constraints, your purpose. Yeah, and this improves the output regardless of the exact phrasing. So there is no value, I think, in searching the best prompt. I'm using this analogy, by the way. I want to tell this. Trying to work with someone else's prompt is like trying to treat yourself with someone else's prescription.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So we and as I said, we are not engineering anything here. We are articulating our own needs. So it's better to work on your expressive talent. So try to understand your problem and try to understand the context and your intention. This would work much better than best prompt.
Best prompts or templates. And
Yeah.
I discovered something about myself as AI. I use AI a lot as I have a teammate. And if I tell something to my teammate, I define a need that we need to work on, a project. If my teammate doesn't come up with a solution that I was expected, I used to become angry with him or her or maybe previously, but now if I tell AI to do something and AI doesn't reply back me, I can't question AI. It's not about it. I always question myself, oh, I'm misunderstood. I should have asked it in a different way. So I use AI unconsciously as a feedback mechanism about myself. And I am not now much clearer and much better about guiding, doesn't matter AI or other people, about what I want from that project or what are the exact outputs I'm expecting from this task. So it helped me improve my that area in a positive way. And
So, sorry.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the first question. Does AI can AI make us, better human beings? In personal sense, now it makes you better because you understand what you need to do by getting those feedbacks from AI, right? As a, as an
Exactly.
individual sense, you become better in expressing yourself.
Exactly. Because I take full responsibility, whereas if I work with other people, I now understand that I had the tendency maybe to put the responsibility on them. Oh, they didn't understand me, they didn't work, they were not productive enough. So excuses and excuses. I never maybe honestly turned myself and questioned if I was guiding properly or I was clear about what I'm expecting from that person. But with AI, it's a must. I can't accuse AI of not doing anything. So I have to improve myself to get more out of that AI.
Great example. Great.
So that improved me.
Yeah.
And we discussed about every different angle of AI. Maybe the hardest question here, the last question. If you had control and if you had the responsibility, what would be the one single thing that you would design in any AI system? That you would put something that any AI system will follow that. What would it be?
It's a really hard question. Yeah. I mean,
Choose one. There are many, but
yeah, I mean, I have to think if I could design one rule for every AI system, it would be, I think, always make the human's intention visible and controllable. Because when we don't see, why the system is giving a certain output, or how their own input shaping it, we lose our agency. we need to put our agency on this decision making processes, especially. So transparency is not just, I think, about, you know, showing how the model works. It's about, you know, how about making the human feel at every moment they can question, intervene, redirect, and reclaim the process, because we are in the process as well. It's not just an entity there. So if AI systems, you know, consistently reinforce this sense of human authorship, this is your decision, your frame, and your direction. So this part is important. So you're not getting that authority from AI. You are, you know that you are in this process. And so with this one, I mean, we would build technologies, you know, that amplify people instead of overriding them. You know, the first thing you mentioned, I mean, people are mostly afraid of replacing by AI. So this may also help us. So this protects this kind of rule, maybe protects accountability, supports creativity, and anchors AI as a partner rather than authority. So the important thing is we have to use AI as partner. This is critical.
Thank you very much for sharing your opinion and your expertise and answering all the questions honestly. And I hope we can repeat that in the future with too many new AI developments. I'm sure there will be other topics that we will have to discuss. And thanks a lot for coming one more time.
Thank you so much for inviting. It was really pleasure to talk all about this, you know, hard questions that you have asked. Thank you so much.
She guides big brands, no code in sight. Change is her daily fight. AI arrived. She leaned right in, turned curiosity into a win. AI is no saint. It copies our mess. Bias in, bias out, no less. It talks with flair. Sounds wise and fair, but it is still our values talking there.